Okay, so welcome to our webinar today, USA Test Prep in the Oklahoma classroom. We're going to go through several big features of the site and talk about specifically why they're important in Oklahoma and how you can best use the site. And we're going to go ahead and jump right in here because our goal is to be finished in about 20 minutes. So first, just some basic information about your state. There are 64 high schools, 67 middle schools, and 62 elementary schools that currently use USA Test Prep. And in Oklahoma, we have an annual user meeting, typically in October in the fall. We try to pick a different location within the state to accommodate, different teachers. And that's a great option if it's close to you. It's a half-day training. You'll get, lunch provided, a certificate that you attended for credits for professional development. And it's pretty in-depth because it is a half-day training. So Oklahoma is one of the states that we visit every year. For content, for Oklahoma, it's been pretty stable, but just to let you know, our content team, they're always staying up to date with, your standards. If there's any changes coming in the future, they take care of all of that. And if there's ever a standards update in your state, then those will be rolled out, and you'll see those automatically implemented as those changes come out in your state. This year in particular, we have a new 11th grade science test that you may have noticed. And we're going to go ahead and jump into creating a custom assessment. This is one of the most powerful tools on our site, is the ability to create your own assessment, which we call benchmarks, but really it's just an assessment builder where you can pick out which standards, objectives, and even questions that you want. And so I realize for some people this might be a review, but hopefully you'll learn something new throughout the webinar. So on your benchmarks tab, there's a link to create new benchmark, and there's different types of benchmarks that you can make. The first one is basic mode, where you pick the length and then USA Test Prep will pick out the questions. So you just decide how long you want it to be, and there's 4 options: small, medium, large, or actual test length, the full test. And if you pick anything in basic mode, it's going to pull questions from all the different standards according to their weights. So if I show a breakdown of what I'm talking about here. So here's where you pick the length. Again, I'm in basic mode. I just pick the length. USA Test Prep will pick the questions, and I can see how many questions that test will have up here in the right corner under items. And one thing to know is that for a basic option benchmark where you are not choosing the questions, you still have a chance at the end to preview the questions and make sure that everything, is what you want. So you will have the final say on what questions are there. And then if you click on that actual test percentages link, what basic mode will do is whatever breakdown of standards are for your subject area, it's going to pull questions to, go according to this pie chart. So if I have 40% here in algebraic reasoning and algebra, then approximately 40% of the questions picked will be from that standard. So it's going to, very much align with your standards and the weight of each one. So again, that's basic mode, and that's a great option for like an end of the year test or beginning of the year diagnostic. So if next school year, if you want to just get a baseline for where your students are starting and then just have different checkpoints throughout the year, then the basic benchmark is a great one to use. Now, there might be other times where you want to customize it a little bit more depending on what you're teaching and you want to assess over specific standards or objectives. Then you'd want to switch over to our custom mode where you can pick out the standards and objectives. You can also search through our database of questions, and you can find questions in different ways. You can sort by DOK level, difficulty. If you're looking for short answer questions, you'll have a filter right above the questions that you can have them sort in different ways. Now, some tips when you're building a benchmark: if you can't see the whole question, because a lot of the times it is cut off, you can click on it to preview. You can also look at the little statistics icon to see the DOK level very quickly and the percent correct. And you'll also have a feedback button for every question in case you feel like it belongs better with a different objective, or if you feel like it's too easy or too difficult, or we need to tweak it in some way. You can let us know all of that through there. Okay, then also in the benchmark, you can actually add questions of your own if you'd like to. There's a separate step called favorites where you can do this, and we have two formats. You can author your own multiple choice and your own free response. So if you feel like you already have questions that you like, that you want to use instead of our questions, or maybe you want to use a combination of USA Test Prep questions and your own, then you can do that very easily. And when you add your own question, it's not shared with everyone else on USA Test Prep. It's only in your account for your own use. So it's not, sent out to everyone. All right, and then also on the benchmark, one thing that teachers, we get a lot of great feedback is sharing benchmarks. So if, a big thing is wanting a common assessment for your department, it's really easy to do that with the benchmark. There's two ways you can share it. You can share it either when you are creating a benchmark. There's an option that says teacher, and it will have your name, or shared benchmark. So you'll just click shared benchmark. And then for a benchmark that has already been created, but you didn't share it, but now your team decides that you want to use that one, there's a little settings gear icon on your benchmarks tab, and there's an option to share it through there. So you can go back and share benchmarks that you've already created. So that's building a common assessment or a custom assessment or a beginning of the year test or an end of the year test. Benchmarks have lots of different uses, and you can build however many you need to. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about are the different accommodations that are available within USA Test Prep. There are some accommodations that you decide within your control, and there are some that students have on their side. So we'll talk about both kinds. As far as teacher controlled, if you are creating a benchmark, one of the options you have is to reduce the answer choices from 4 to 3. And when you do that, the fourth answer choice is not removed, it's just eliminated. So the student will still see 4, but 1 will be strike through, and they cannot choose that one. You can also change the difficulty level of practice questions. There are beginner, random, and advanced options if you're assigning a set of practice questions. And if you're creating a custom benchmark, then you can just actually look at each question's DOK and difficulty level. And then you can also print benchmarks and reformat and adjust it as you need to. Now, if you're assigning a set of practice questions or a random practice test, we don't have a print option for those because it is random. But the reason a benchmark can be printed is because it's the exact same set of questions for all of your students. So it's one set, so it's one version where you have an answer key and a print option. Now, on students' accounts, when they're taking a test or completing practice questions, they have an eliminate feature where they can eliminate answer choices that they believe are not correct. They also have a highlighter tool where they can mark keywords and phrases if that helps them to identify those. All of our instructional videos have transcripts now. That's something we added this school year. There's a show transcript link, and then they can see everything that is being said. And then we also have audio for questions, answer choices, and passages. So here's a student test. I can see that one answer choice has been eliminated, and there's the A that is strike through. There's the audio speaker icon, the highlight tool, just as an example. And then as far as reading passages go, we hear a lot of feedback from teachers who are building a benchmark with passages, and the frustration might be, I don't want my students to have to read 5 passages for a total of 10 questions. It's just not efficient with their time to read that many passages. And so when you're building a benchmark, first of all, you can sort passages by lexile level, which we just added last week on our site, number of words and number of questions. But let's say you want students to really hone in on one or two passages and then answer questions across lots of different objectives. What you'd want to do is create a custom benchmark. And custom benchmark has a different view if you're building an ELA passage-based test. You're going to have your passages listed, and you can see the word count, the lexile level, and how many questions total there are for that passage. And then when you click on the little plus sign for the passage, you'll have all of the questions available, regardless of what standard and objective they are. And then you'll see which objective the question is for. And so that way you can hit a lot of different areas, all relating back to one passage, if you don't want students to have to read a bunch of passages just for a few questions. All right, next we're going to talk about different item types. As far as item types go, we have your traditional multiple choice, which students will see in practice questions and on benchmarks if you pick those. And then we also have technology enhanced items, which we call performance tasks. And those you can assign separately as their own assignment, or you can include them in a benchmark. And for the different types that we have drag drop, which we don't call anything drag drop. We have different kinds of those. So you'd want to look for classify, order, labeling are a few examples. We have matching types. For Oklahoma, for drop down and hotspot, we don't call ours that. We call ours a little bit different. Drop down would be called multi for us, where students have to fill in the blanks with different terms. And then hotspot is what we call choose, where students have to select multiple correct answers. And so here's kind of a preview of what we're working on. We are looking to have evidence-based selected response items ready at the beginning of next year. And so those are like the two-part items, two-part question types that a lot more states are getting. So we are working on those, and we're also developing additional performance task types. If there's one in particular that you guys rely on in Oklahoma that you haven't seen yet on our site, let us know, because that's important feedback for us. You can send in a feedback through the button at the bottom of any of your pages once you're logged in. But again, our content team tries to stay ahead of the trend and what is happening. All right, next we're going to go into how to best remediate on the site, and your best option is going to be through a benchmark. So we kind of talked about building a benchmark, and then after you assign it, you'll get really detailed results at the objective level, and also some really neat tools where you can quickly remediate in the areas of weakness for your students. So here's a sample results page. You have your scores by standard, which gives you a pretty quick idea of where your students did well, where they didn't. You also have what we call the student.rank tab, where you can see individual student performance using these color-coded dots. And when we zoom in here, you'll see that we have two buttons, assign individual weakness and assign average weakness. And those are like the two magic buttons on our site, where you can, in 2 clicks, give all of your students practice in the 3 lowest scoring objectives, either individually according to their scores or the overall class's weakness areas. And you can use one or both of those buttons. One piece of advice would be to wait until all of your students are done taking their benchmark, because when you assign it, it assigns it to everybody. So if you were to assign it to these students here, and I have 10 more students finish tomorrow, and I go back here tomorrow, I'm going to assign it to everyone again, including the students who already received that assignment. So that's something that we are looking to change in the future, and to make this especially more customized, so you can maybe tack on a video with it or set your own dates and settings. So that's something that is hopefully coming, but just for now, try and wait until all your students are done before you use those buttons. Then you also have an item analysis for each question where you can see the percentage of students who got it right, and you can sort your questions in different ways. So if you're looking at your item analysis, these blue links are actually clickable, so you can sort your questions by objective, by DOK level, by percent correct. So if you wanted to look at all of your DOK level 1 questions together, you could have them sorted that way, and all your DOK level 2 and 3. Here I have it sorted by objective, so I can see the standard is 43% correct overall. The adaptation objective was a 29%, and then I can see the individual questions that go with that objective. And once you click view for a question, you'll see a breakdown for how A, B, C, and D were answered to give you some good information into what kinds of mistakes your students might be making for those questions there. And that's something that's only available with the benchmark because the questions are the same. So if you need that level of data, then you definitely want to build a benchmark to get that. And then finally, just a quick reminder that we have a lot of resources for your subject area that you don't have to have a computer lab for, or it could just be something that you add in your lesson plan for that day. We have a bell ringer, which is like a warm-up question. You could watch an instructional video with your class. Here's just a sample page using these different tabs along the very top. It's labeled resources. So if you go to your subject area, you'll have all the same resources regardless of what subject you teach. So again, the bell ringer is an example. The page is much longer than what I have here in my screenshot, but it just gives you an idea that there's a lot more here that you can use without having to create a benchmark or an assignment. You can still have students practice with the question just by using an activity and throwing it up on the board in your class. And then we also have test information for your subject area. Let me go back really quickly to this screen here. Over on the right, you'll see this little test information icon. So if you click on that, it's going to show you exactly how many items we have for your subject. So how many total questions are in our database, technology enhanced items, videos, and vocabulary. And we're always adding to that number. So you'll see that hopefully grow throughout the school year. Every now and then we have to maybe remove questions that they no longer fit, but we're always adding as well. All right, so that's the end of the information and the presentation that I wanted to go over. I do want to log into a sample Oklahoma teacher account really quickly just to point out a few of the things that I mentioned in here, and then we'll wrap up in a couple of minutes. Okay, so here I have a sample Oklahoma teacher account pulled up, and whether you teach elementary, middle, or high school, the interface is the same. So what I wanted to point out, if I go to benchmarks and click on the results here, and then here's that student.rank tab that we talked about and the item analysis. And I just wanted to show how easy it is if I wanted to sort, let's say by DOK. So I clicked on DOK and it refreshes. So now I have my DOK level 1, my 2, and my 3, and they're grouped accordingly. And again, you can change it up. So if you wanted to view percent correct and look at which questions were the most missed, now I have those at the top. And if I click view, here's the breakdown for how each answer choice was answered. And then you still have the standard and objective information in the bottom right corner. So you can still look at that. And you can also view the statistics right there for the DOK, the percent correct. And then you could also give us feedback about the question from here as well. So that's, again, the item analysis, lots of great ways that you can sort it. And we are working on building an export for this, so you could export it all to Excel. The other thing I wanted to show is building a benchmark with passages, and just very quickly how that works. So I'm going to go ahead and choose my subject here. And remember, I'm going to go to custom because that's where I can actually pick out the passages and see the questions. And so I'm in English 2, so that's why I have a view by passage view. Other subjects are going to have this view where you just pick by standard, but for English and anything with passages, there's a view by passage mode, and you can switch back and forth over here on the right. And if you want to sort the passages, you can sort them again by lexile, word count, question count, if you wanted to find the ones that have the most questions. So here it's sorted with the least questions, but I can just click on that questions column to make it reorganize. And then I have, passages with, 20 and 30 questions, and I can click to load more to see additional passages. And I can click view to actually see the passage. And if I click the little plus, then that's where I can see all the related questions and which objectives they're aligned with. That way, again, you can hit several different objectives with only one or a handful of passages. So just wanted to point that out in case anyone hasn't built a benchmark before that way. And again, the lexile level is a recent addition that just was made available last week. So you'll see that added here. So if there are any questions, I'll be happy to go ahead and start answering any questions that come through. But that concludes all the information that I wanted to go over. Again, I will send a recording of this later on today. And if you have any follow-up questions, just reply back to the email from me and I'll be happy to help.